So we're here to revise economics, and I'll be looking forward to seeing a lot of people coming on live with me or to join. So we have today. It's economics is in the next 4 or 5 hours, I think. Okay. So let's start. What are the questions we have here?
First I want to ask is about the limitations of GDP.
So when we talk about GDP, basically we're talking about the output of a country. So it started with the PPC, which is the combination of goods that can be produced within a given economy. That's what GDP or PPC is. So how do we measure our PPC? The measurement of the PPC brings us to GDP. So that means the productive capacity of a country comes with what it can produce, right? So whatever you can produce as a country or as an economy is measured in GDP. So the GDP is there talking about what this country can produce, which is the output. So it now takes us to talking about nominal or real GDP. GDP is there, it is nominal. But we have to understand that in every economy, the prices are not stable. So because prices are not stable, we have to understand that we need adjustment with our GDP. That brings us to what we call real GDP. So there's real GDP because we have to adjust inflation with it. That is for GDP. So let's go to wages now. Wages also have to be adjusted with inflation. That is the only way we can be able to buy what we used to buy. So as soon as inflation increases, as soon as inflation rises in a country or in an economy, the next thing people will think about is especially employees, because their purchasing power would fall, because inflation reduces the value of money. I think that is clear. So if inflation reduces the value of money, the next thing people will think about is how are we going to be able to buy what we are used to buying. So to be able to buy that, they need to ensure that their employers pay them more. So that means we have to adjust the wages with inflation. So if that is done, then we can still buy what we used to buy. But if not, then the demand within the economy would fall. Do you get it? Okay. What helps?
FDR.
Oh, I see Joseph Adam. Yeah, okay. Exam is today, yes, I know. All the best. We are just making some revision here too. All right, we'll move on.
Okay, the World Trade Organization.
The World Trade Organization. Before we go into World Trade Organization, between economies, right?
No.
That is globalization, okay? If there's globalization has happened because we think we can transact with each other. We think that we can depend on each other in terms of economy. So we have our strengths. Each economy has its own strengths. Oh, Libya as a country, we have oil. Oh, Turkey doesn't have oil. So how can we relate with Turkey? We have what Turkey needs, and maybe Turkey has what we need to. So this brings about trade relationship, right? But this trade relationship needs to be regularized. There's need for regulation. We don't just continue to trade with each other. If we don't regularize it, if we don't put rules, regulations into them, then we might overdo. One of us might be exploited. So that is why the World Trade Organization is coming into it. So with World Trade Organization, they come up with strategies, they come up with regulations, they come up with law. They become a mediator between each countries that needs to trade with each other. Not only when there is conflict, they come up with laws that would allow us to trade without any problems. This is what they do. And there's no way, the tongue and the teeth, they usually even fight. So there's no way, no matter how friendly we are, we might have arguments. Yes or no? So having this argument, we cannot solve it ourselves, because solving it between each other, we might feel like someone is better off than another, someone is worse off. So we need a neutral body, which is the World Trade Organization, to solve any dispute regarding trade relationship. So that is the main motive of trade, WTO. They are there to ensure that trade relationship between countries goes smoothly.
They settle trade
Disputes. And not only they settle it, they ensure that there are regulations there are guidelines to trading. So they set the guidelines to trading.
Do they act as the middleman of the
Yeah, they are the mediators. But they don't do only that. There's relationship, trade relationship, right? So there are rules that bind how we relate. So that we cannot decide. The World Trade Organization will decide. Is it clear?
Yeah.
What else there?
What are the features of them? Can you explain them as well?
Give me one. Just name them and I will.
Trade negotiations, implementation and monitoring, settling trade disputes, and building membership.
All they just said here is the same thing I just talked about, because they regularize affairs. They stand as mediators. They ensure that one party is not exploiting another party. That is what they do. But the criticism about World Trade Organization is that developing countries, when we look at the history, most of what we transact, most of what we trade is about raw materials. And where are these raw materials? They are in developing economies, yes or no? So the criticism about World Trade Organization is that they give edge, they give importance to developed economies than developing economies, where these things comes from. So when you export crude oil, in crude oil we have petrol, we have fuel, we have kerosene, we have gas, we have a lot of things from the crude oil. But developing countries will export crude oil. When they do this export, they sell it at a cheaper rate. But when they're getting it back, because they need it to be transformed, they need it to be converted, because before they can use it, so they buy it at a higher rate, selling it cheaper to developed economies, now buying it at higher prices. And World Trade is not trying to leverage about these things. So these are the criticism about the World Trade Organization. They felt they are biased towards developing economies.
Okay, so that the country won't benefit from it.
So developing countries, they feel themselves like they are worst off in any trade relationship, because they sell more and they get less.
This is for the developing
economy. And the example I just made is about crude oil. When you look at crude oil, there are a lot of resources in crude oil, but developing economies do not have the financial capability to get equipment or machinery that would transform these things. So, and World Trade Organization is not doing anything about it. Do you understand? They are not protecting. So the point is, World Trade Organizations are not protecting developing economies. That's the main criticism about World Trade Organization. Is it clear?
Yeah.
So we'll move on.
Mr.
I will stop the live and I will come back again. Okay.
How does it destroy the environment?